It started with a click, not a shot, not a shout. Just a subtle, dry metallic click echoing against the mountain ridge behind the outdoor shooting range. A gust of wind carried dust across the gravel lot, stirring paper targets and fluttering empty brass casings. The instructor's whistle never came. The man in lane 7 hadn't moved much, didn't posture like the younger guys, didn't grunt like the middle-aged weekend warriors who came to prove they hadn't aged. His form was quiet, clean, legs shoulder-width apart. Breath synced with the beat of something internal, steady, controlled. Jason Statham looked like a retired welder, maybe ex-mechanic. Rough skin, worn boots, hoodie up against the wind. But the sleeves rolled up just enough for the instructor to see something he shouldn't have. A faded ink pattern on his left forearm, partially obscured but unmistakable. A single seal trident, real, not tourist ink, not Hollywood stylized, real deal. The instructor, a tall, lean 30-something former SEAL himself, froze, his eyes narrowed. He turned his head slightly as if rechecking a memory. There was something about the stance too, familiar, the kind of body language only learned under fire. And then, one glance at the man's eyes after a single squeeze of the trigger. Too relaxed, too cold. Jason Statham wasn't firing to train. He was revisiting muscle memory, for something real. But that wasn't how it all began. 2 days earlier, a dust-coated pickup truck rolled into the edge of a quiet Montana town. The sign read, "Hawthorne County, respect the quiet." A strange motto, but fitting. This was the kind of place where nothing ever happened and the people liked it that way. Jason Statham stepped out slowly at a gas station that hadn't updated its signage in 20 years. He moved with a slight limp, not from weakness, but from an old wound he no longer acknowledged. He refilled the truck and took a moment to clean his windshield, eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting something to break the silence. It didn't. Inside the Minimart, a young clerk with greasy hair barely looked up from his phone. Jason placed a bottle of water and a protein bar on the counter. The clerk finally glanced up. There was a flicker, something in the man's face, like he recognized him, but didn't know from where. "You knew in town?" the kid asked without commitment. Jason nodded once. "Just passing through." The kid didn't press, but after Jason walked out, he pulled out his phone and quietly snapped a photo of the truck's plates. By evening, Jason checked into a low-end roadside motel, the kind with flickering signs and doors that opened directly onto the gravel lot. He chose the last room corner unit. Always. 2 walls to protect, 2 to watch. Habit. No luggage, just a duffel. No name offered at check-in, just cash. The old woman at the front desk, mid-60s, white hair tied in a knot, one eye fogged over, glanced at the bills and then back at his face. "You're not the type that causes trouble," she muttered. Not a question. A memory. Jason said nothing, just gave a slight nod. He didn't ask for a receipt. That night the television stayed off. The lights too. Just the glow of a single lamp and the sound of Jason slowly unpacking. Inside the duffel, a single black shirt, a folded military-style utility jacket, and a cloth-wrapped handgun, worn but clean. Beneath that, a tightly packed case containing what looked like paperwork but wasn't. He unwrapped the gun first, checked it, cleaned it, rewrapped it, then sat. And waited. For nothing. The next morning, Jason Statham arrived early at the Hawthorne Ridge shooting range. It wasn't much, just a series of plywood booths, a gravel lot, and a distant line of paper targets pinned to wooden stakes. A U.S. flag hung half-limp on a rusted pole. A few others were already there. A father and teenage son bonding over rented rifles. A trio of younger guys in tactical gear trying too hard. And then the instructor, Marcus Ewell, clean-cut, square-jawed, wore a range patch and sunglasses even in the shade. Former SEAL, now running weekend firearm courses for money. Jason signed the logbook with barely legible initials. Paid in cash again. Marcus glanced once, then twice. "Lane 7, he said flatly, gesturing. Jason nodded and moved down the gravel line. No chatter, no questions. He placed his small case down gently, unwrapped his weapon with surgical precision, and began his routine. The way he loaded the mags, swift, silent, no wasted movement. The way he checked wind direction by observing dust, not flags. The way his eyes scanned the field first before ever raising the gun. It made Marcus uneasy. For the first 90 seconds, Marcus watched from the side, then Jason fired. Not fast, not flashy, but each shot landed with mathematical accuracy. One, reset. Another, reset, no celebration, no satisfaction. Like he'd done this more times than he'd driven a car. Then the wind picked up, and that's when Marcus saw the ink. Just above the fold of Jason's hoodie, the forearm showed faded tattoos, part of a SEAL team unit code, an old date in Roman numerals, and the unmistakable trident. Not fresh. Not for vanity. Old and earned. Marcus stepped closer, not openly, just a few inches, trying to verify what he'd seen. But Jason didn't look at him. He didn't need to. His posture shifted ever so slightly, not defensive, just aware. Marcus paused. Something in his stomach turned cold. That tattoo was from a unit that didn't exist anymore, or so they'd been told. Back at the front desk, Marcus pulled up a secure app on his phone, the kind former teams used to keep tabs when someone shows up from the other side. He typed in the partial trident code and the Roman numerals. No match, but the search pinged. Redacted service record, honorably discharged, classified unit, flagged clearance, only 2 words under status, retired conditional. Marcus blinked. Conditional meant one thing, they could still call him back. But Jason Statham didn't look like someone waiting for a call. He looked like someone hiding from it. And now Marcus had to decide, call it out, or leave it buried, because if he was right, this wasn't just another ghost from the war. This was someone they'd once trained to hunt ghosts. And the man was awake again. The instructor didn't blink. He was a man trained to lead young warriors into hostile zones who'd cleared compounds with blood in his boots. But right now, his throat dried. Jason Statham's eyes didn't flash with anger or pride or even recognition. Just calculation, like he was measuring something behind the man's spine. 1 second, 2. Jason's silence stretched and the wind picked up across the gravel range. The instructor finally spoke again. Quieter now. Your read. Jason Statham gave a nod, a microscopic one. Like confirming a file had been read, not like accepting a compliment. Then he turned back to the bench. No chest beating, no theatrics, just the click of a bolt sliding into place. The instructor stood in silence, then backed up without realizing. Power had shifted. Not just in posture, in presence. From the next booth, the younger bearded veteran leaned in to whisper. That's the ghost from Kandahar, right? The instructor didn't answer. He knew better. Ghosts don't appreciate being named. Jason Statham adjusted his stance for a final shot, then pulled the trigger. Dead center again. He let the weapon rest. No cleanup. No nod to the crowd. He simply walked to the locker room, leaving the rifle cold and silent. The SEAL instructor hesitated, then followed, but not with authority. With curiosity. Inside the locker room, Jason removed his gloves slowly. There were old scars on his knuckles, some pale from age, others deep with memory. A duffel bag sat at the bottom of the locker. He unzipped it halfway and pulled out a folded gray hoodie. Just as he began pulling it over his head, the instructor spoke from behind. I was trained by El Morro. Jason paused mid-motion, hoodie hanging off his elbow. His head turned halfway, eyes catching the man in the mirror. She used to talk about a teammate, the instructor added, voice low. Didn't say much, only that if he ever walked back into your life, you better listen first, talk second. Jason turned fully now, arms down. For the first time, his lips moved. She's still alive, the instructor nodded. Promoted. Teaches advanced counter-hostage, DC. Academy. Jason didn't say another word, just looked down. There was a long silence. In that moment, you could tell something had cracked open. A memory. A loss. A debt, maybe. The instructor cleared his throat, stepping back. Didn't mean to pry, it's just, you don't forget a name like hers. Jason nodded once, but this time it was slower, deliberate. Then he zipped up the duffel and left. Outside, Jason walked toward his truck, a battered 1980s Land Cruiser, matte green, rust in the seams, rear bumper held with wire. He tossed the duffel in the back seat, but as he shut the door, a voice called from behind. You still got the coin? The instructor asked. Jason turned, narrowed his eyes. He didn't answer. I've seen it once, the instructor explained. The coin Morrow gave her team when you cleared that safe house outside Fallujah. They said only 3 men made it out. 1 left the service. 1 died in Manila. The 3rd disappeared. Jason stepped toward him. Not fast, just close enough. He reached into his front jeans pocket, pulled out a dull silver coin, scarred, blackened edges, stamped with a falcon. He didn't hand it over. He just held it up in the light, then put it away. Still don't like being asked questions, Jason said, and walked off again. By now, 2 or 3 other shooters had started whispering nearby. A teenage kid who'd been watching quietly from behind a safety wall mouthed, "Who is that guy?" One of the staff just shook his head. "Not someone you cross." Jason drove off the gravel lot, tires crunching. The instructor remained standing there, arms folded, like he had more to say but knew it wasn't the right day. Hours passed. A gray drizzle soaked the small mountain town. That evening, Jason stood outside a rundown veterans center. Rusted rails, flickering sign, and one broken flagpole. He walked in, past the check-in desk without a glance. Nobody stopped him. Inside, an elderly black woman in her late 60s sat behind a wall of paper files, glasses low on her nose, tapping a pencil. "You're late, Reed." Jason sat across from her. "Been a while, L. Morrow didn't smile. She just watched him. "I heard you were dead." She tilted her head. "Heard it from someone who said they zipped the bag themselves." Jason looked away. "They zipped something, wasn't me." L tapped the desk, let the silence linger. Still angry, Jason shook his head. "No point. Still dangerous, only when I'm not left alone." A beat passed between them. L reached under the desk and slid out a thin file. It was stamped with red tape. "You know why I called you here." Jason flipped it open. Black and white photos. One was of a young recruit, bruises on his ribs. Another showed a weapons locker vandalized. A third was a blown-up phone shot. The SEAL instructor from earlier today, his face bloodied. Jason stared at it, quiet. "We've got corruption in the training program," L said. "They're hazing the wrong kids. Some are washing out. One tried to overdose last week." Jason didn't speak. He just shut the folder. "I want you to go back in," she added. Jason leaned back. "I'm not that man." "Maybe not," L replied. "But the boys running this mess still think you are. That's enough." He didn't answer. The fluorescent light buzzed above them. Elle stood slowly and walked toward the far wall where a faded map of the training facility hung. She touched the bottom corner where the older ranges used to be. "They're using this space for private drills. Off record. No observers." Jason stood. "You'll go?" she asked. He adjusted his jacket. "I'll watch. That's all I need." But in his eyes it was already more. The old wooden gate creaked as Jason Statham stepped into the forgotten old Range C. No lights. No observers, just the faint whistle of wind over cracked dirt. Rusted targets leaned sideways like bones from a forgotten war. His boots sank softly into the gravel. Every step was silent, controlled, deliberate. A low murmur echoed from the shadows. Voices, not just one, maybe 3. He moved left, placing himself in the blind spot of the bunker's entrance. From this angle he could hear everything. A young man's voice, sharp and nervous. Then another, deeper, dominant, barking commands. That voice belonged to the SEAL instructor. Jason Statham didn't move. He waited, breathing quiet, arms loose. The voices continued, and one line hit like a knife in daylight. "You either survive Range C or we find someone who can." Then a sharp cry of pain. A body hitting gravel. Jason stepped inside. Nobody noticed him at first. The 3 men were too focused. One of them, a young black recruit with a split lip, was on one knee trying to breathe through the pain. Another trainee stood off to the side, clearly uncomfortable but not intervening. The SEAL instructor stood tall, calm, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. Then silence fell. The instructor turned. Jason Statham was already inside. He didn't say a word. The instructor's eyes went wide for a second, but his mouth twisted into a grin. "You lost, old man." Jason didn't move. He glanced at the trainee on the ground, then back up. No change in expression. The instructor stepped forward, puffed up. "This isn't for spectators." Still, Jason didn't speak. The silent air thickened. One of the trainees shifted, uneasy. The instructor glanced back at him, irritated. Eyes front. Jason finally walked forward. "Let him up," he said quietly. The instructor laughed. "Excuse me." Jason didn't repeat himself. He stepped past the man, walked straight to the injured recruit, and offered a hand. The kid didn't take it. He didn't trust it. He looked around, confused, blood trailing from his lip. Then the instructor grabbed Jason's wrist. "You don't get to tell me how I run my program." That's when it happened. Jason twisted without effort, breaking the hold and stepping in close. Too close. The instructor's breath hitched, caught off guard. Jason leaned in, quiet and cold. "I built this program," he whispered. And he wasn't lying. The instructor stumbled back, shaken. Something in his face shifted. It wasn't just fear. It was recognition. Jason slowly rolled up his sleeve. The tattoo was there, small, old, faded, but unmistakable. a black falcon clutching a compass. The mark of a covert SEAL unit decommissioned decades ago. A unit no one talked about, not publicly. Not unless you were part of it. The room shifted. The two trainees exchanged stunned glances. The instructor froze, mouth parted, unable to speak. Jason turned back to the injured recruit and helped him up this time. The kid took the hand, slowly, carefully. Jason didn't say anything to him, just made sure he was steady on his feet. His actions were enough. The instructor finally found his voice. "That tattoo, that's not possible." "You're supposed to be gone," Jason cut him off. "I was." Then someone called. The instructor looked down, lost for words. He wasn't in control anymore. Whatever power he thought he had evaporated the moment Jason Statham walked in. "You want to run these boys into the ground, you do it right." "Not like this. Not in the shadows," Jason said. The instructor stepped back, still stunned. "You don't understand these new kids. They're soft. They're not ready. They don't know pain." Jason's voice dropped into a growl. "You don't teach pain. You teach respect, discipline, honor. This is just abuse hiding behind a uniform." The trainee beside the instructor finally broke. "Sir, I didn't sign up to hurt people like this." Jason turned toward him, nodding once. "Then don't." He faced the others, making sure they were steady. The kid with the split lip gave him a confused, grateful look. "You good?" Jason asked. The kid nodded. "Yes, sir." Jason started to leave, but the instructor barked behind him, "You have no authority here." Jason stopped. Then he turned slowly and took 2 steps back toward him. "You think this range is yours?" Jason asked. The man stood his ground. Jason reached into his back pocket and pulled out something flat, a card. Not military ID, not a badge, just a laminated emblem, the kind that opens secure doors without making a sound. "This range was built by my people, signed off by a woman named El Morrow." The instructor blinked. Jason held the card up. "You're not just out of line, you're off the record." That landed. Jason dropped the card back in his pocket and walked off into the dusk. The moment he was gone, the silence collapsed. The instructor stumbled back, breath shaky. The two trainees were still staring, unsure what they had just seen. Somewhere far behind them, the gate creaked closed again. Jason didn't look back. The sky was molasses dark now, and the hum of distant range lights faded behind Jason Statham's silhouette as he walked into the tree line behind Range C. The trees here weren't thick, but they were enough to scatter shadows like ghosts. His boots made almost no sound across the dead leaves. Every step was chosen, every breath was measured, but Jason Statham wasn't walking to clear his mind. He was tracking, back at the bunker. The instructor's call hadn't gone nowhere. It reached someone in the classified depths of the old SEAL oversight network, a network Jason himself helped build, then dismantled from the inside. But old wires stay live, especially when fear spreads fast. And when the instructor uttered the word Morrow, the other end of the line didn't ask who he was. They asked one thing: is the old man still lethal? Now Jason paused by a cracked utility panel built into the earth. He pulled the small magnetic pin from beneath his belt buckle, military issue, black on black. Click. The latch on the panel snapped loose. He opened it slowly. Inside, untouched for a decade, lay a dusty black case. A single flick of his thumb cracked the latch. Inside, a disassembled M4, a field journal, and a data drive marked for El Morrow only. He pulled only the journal, tucked it into his jacket, and left the rest behind him. Branches snapped. Jason didn't flinch. He simply said, "You should have kept running." From the shadows, a figure stepped out, one of the older trainees. Not the black recruit, the other one. His face was pale now, all the smirking drained from him. "I didn't know who you were," the man muttered. "I thought you were just some crazy old guy." Jason tilted his head slightly. "But you followed me. I had to see if it was true." Jason approached him without breaking eye contact. "And what do you think now?" The man swallowed hard, then extended his hand. Not to fight, but to offer it. A silent nod. A wordless apology. Jason stared at it for a beat, then moved past him. "You're lucky," he said without turning. "You'll live long enough to make better choices." Back in the facility, alarms were being flipped, quietly. The type that don't beep out loud but trigger new security layers. The ones built in for forgotten ghosts like Jason Statham. SEAL veterans with classified tattoos. Legends who weren't supposed to still walk among civilians. One of the staff members had scanned Jason's face through a back-channel system, and someone with 4 stars just got notified. An hour later, the SEAL instructor stood in a dark command booth with two men in suits behind him. Surveillance footage of Range C played on loop. Jason walking in. Jason disabling the instructor. Jason exposing the tattoo. One suit tapped the screen, froze the frame. "That tattoo," he muttered. "It's not just SEAL oversight, it's Morrow's personal unit." The other nodded grimly. "And if he's back, the rest might be too." The instructor looked confused. "Rest of what?" neither man answered. Because back in the woods, Jason had dug something out. A sealed envelope buried beside a long-dead tree marked only with a code word. Dustlight. The kind of thing you bury when you walk away for good. But sometimes the world doesn't let you walk away. Jason opened the envelope. Inside was a single photo, 6 people, all in black combat gear, no insignias. In the middle, a younger Jason Statham. On the back, scrawled in pen, "If this photo resurfaces, the circle is broken." Jason folded it and tucked it into his journal. He wasn't coming back to settle old debts. He came back because the signal had returned. And if someone was trying to erase the past, they just woke the wrong ghost. Across the facility, in a restricted armory room, a different kind of alert tripped. A vault labeled Observer pinged for access. The man who tried to open it wore a civilian badge, but the system flagged his real identity. Deep State Logistics, former Black Ops strategist. Someone else knew Jason had reappeared. But here's the twist: they weren't trying to kill him. They were trying to reach him. Jason returned to the range briefly just before midnight, placing the journal beneath a loose steel panel beside Station D. Then he lit a single match and let the smoke rise, standing still, watching the wind take it eastward. That was the old signal. No digital trace. No voice. Just ash on the breeze. Minutes later, a motorcycle headlight blinked in the distance. A familiar low growl. It was her. Morrow, not dead. Just in hiding. She removed the helmet, older now but unmistakable. Mixed-race woman in her 60s, eyes like obsidian, hair tied back in a tight gray braid. She stepped off the bike and didn't say a word. Jason just handed her the photo. She looked at it, tensed, then said one word: "It's begun." Jason nodded. "I saw the look in the instructor's eyes." "They're rebooting Dustlight," Morrow swore under her breath. "If that gets out, we're all dead men walking." Jason turned back toward the woods. "They're not just rebooting it, they've already deployed someone. I was followed earlier." Morrow stiffened. "You think it was him?" Jason paused. "I know it was him." And just then a sharp whistle echoed from the trees. Low, rhythmic, a warning. Jason's eyes narrowed. Morrow dropped to one knee. The past wasn't just calling, it was here. Final scene. Back at the range, the instructor stands over a printed report, Jason Statham's full classified dossier. He flips to the final page. There's a warning stamp. Echo Protocol. Do not engage. Contact Morrow. Too late. Because someone already put a price on Jason's head. And it wasn't the government. It was someone inside the old unit. And they've just landed.